I'm Walter Sullivan. I started at Microsoft in 1990. I was at Microsoft until late 2014 and had a variety of roles within Microsoft. I started in product support for our systems languages products, which was an assembler and a C compiler at the time. We didn't have a C++ compiler. I spent about 3 years there and moved on to program management roles in the developer division, tangentially into Windows and then into the Windows embedded team. And I was in the Windows embedded team in our automotive division until 2014 when I left to go pursue a startup. I was born in Seattle, Virginia Mason Hospital. So I'm a native, born, bred, raised, educated Seattleite. My father was an engineer. He was an electrical engineer. And so we had I would say a pretty pleasant kind of middle-class childhood. I have one younger brother and, we had a great time. Friends, playing in the streets until after dark. My father was very much kind of a tinkering kind of engineer. So he was always tearing something apart to fix it and understand how it worked. And I was the one that he would show how stuff worked. My brother was a bit younger and so wasn't as interested in that. And so I spent a lot of time with my father kind of learning about these things and understanding. And then my dad got a computer and, I started getting a little bit interested in computers and my father was obviously encouraging that. Him being an engineer, he could see that computers were something that was going to change the world. But my dad, in his early computer days, knew about Microsoft and, he would tell me a little bit about him, or he would get programs that were branded Microsoft. And so, there was talk about Microsoft and this company that was growing up in Seattle that was going to change the PC industry. I started when I was 23, straight out of university. And the first several years at Microsoft, it felt like you were still at university. We were all young. We were all having fun. We were doing stuff that we loved. And it was just, we worked all the time, but you didn't really feel like you were working. And we just had a great time. So it was such a fantastic experience. I started in product support, but for our C compiler. So I had to know how to read C code, write C code, debug, diagnose, problems, coding problems. One of the things that I remember coming into the office is it was dark. Like, these guys were developers. The lights were off always. Blinds were shut, like nobody wanted any natural light. It was a group, that team at the time was probably 12 people or, in that order. And, like 5 of us or 6 of us probably started in the same month. And, so we were there a lot. We had, Microsoft had just released an updated version of the compiler, which, let's say the quality was not top notch. And so we were pretty busy with a lot of customer calls. And, we went through a pretty quick iteration of patches to try and resolve that. But it was a bunch of young men who, and unfortunately it was men. That was sort of the situation at the time, who, we were just continuing university. We would work, we would sleep, we would eat, we played frisbee, at lunchtime, we would leave the building and go play frisbee golf, and then we would come back and continue working. We would, you'd be late at night and you'd be scrounging through your colleagues' cubicles to find whatever they had to eat. I spent a lot of nights, in the office but we didn't feel like we were working because we were having fun. And, we were doing a lot of like goofing off or writing programs on the side that we thought were interesting or different things that, that was entertaining to us in addition to the work that we were doing. I was always talking to customers. I was always with our marketing teams demonstrating our products to customers. Because I love the interaction. I loved to hear how customers were using our products, and it was also important to understand what our customers' needs were. So I always had a role in every team that I was in of and that includes, and that's actually how I got into the product group, is I always had a role of understanding and sort of being able to articulate customer needs back to our engineering team so that we could evolve our products that hopefully made them more successful in the market. So I came into the developer division. We were shipping the second version of our C++, well, actually it's the third version, but it was called Visual C++ 2.0. And this was a time in which Microsoft was very much trailing in the industry, in the developer tool industry. We had a competitor down south in California called Borland. They were really, I'll say dominant. I don't remember exactly sort of what the market share split was, but they were really the leading tool in the C and C++ industry. And C and C++, for people who don't know, I mean, this is sort of the programming language that pretty much all commercial software was written with at that time. One of our primary customers was the Windows team and the Office team and the, other teams within Microsoft, because everything in Microsoft was built with our product. And outside of Microsoft, most professional software was built with Borland's product. And that was really where we were. We were the underdog. And we were building a better product. It was evolving. There was, I'm sure, probably likely some missteps from Borland that we were able to capitalize on. And we sort of slowly started clawing market share away. We started getting better at marketing. Eventually, the market flipped and we became the dominant professional development tool across really the entire industry. So I was program manager. For most of that, I was the program manager leading all of our what's called our C++ class libraries. We've started out with really individual product. In the developer division, we had individual products: Visual C++, Visual Basic, and we had an assembler. We had, different really isolated standalone products. And then I don't remember the exact time frame, but say 94-ish, 95, we started to try and integrate those into a single product line that we called Visual Studio, a single development environment, and you could kind of choose the language and choose the tool set that you wanted to use, but there were a lot of common pieces at that time. That product pushed the developer division, I think, over, I don't remember it in the end what our revenue was, but I would say having that product is what pushed the developer division over $1 billion kind of business. So my whole life I've been interested and passionate about cars. I don't know why, because my dad is not that way. My mom is very much not that way. My brother is not that way. I don't know how I got that gene. But I got into cars. This was about 2000 at Microsoft. About 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. I actually was thinking about leaving Microsoft. I had reached out to a former manager of mine, from the Visual Studio days, and he was in this team we were in research at the time in Craig Mundy's research organization, or the automotive team was, and they were taking Windows CE and building an automotive. In the automotive team, I was the one leading our engineering team. My mission is relatively geeky. When I got there, my mission was to build the SDK that all of these systems were going to be built with. All of these automotive systems were going to be built with. So we did some super interesting stuff. I'll give you a couple of interesting examples. Today, I bet the car you have has a USB port in it, which you plug your iPhone or Android or whatever, and you get your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. But in 2003, it was 2004, sorry, Microsoft was the first company to engineer a USB port into a car. So we were working with Fiat Auto, Italian car company. We built a product with them, which they called Blue and Me, and went into production in 2004, as I said, and it was the first. They were the first OEM. You know, imagine an Italian. I think none of us really think about Fiat as an innovative car maker necessarily, but they were the first car maker to put a USB port in their car that you could plug. At that time, the iPhone didn't exist. This was, iPhone was 2006, I think, and this was 2004. At the time, the use case was a USB stick with media on it or something like that. And that was that's what we enabled the USB for. That's one of Microsoft's contribution. I mean, okay, there are many, but if you think about, we were the first to do it. My family was also always into giving back, volunteering or helping out needy. But so, of course, I always participated in the giving campaign from donating part of my salary. But we had some other really fun stuff. As an example, when we were in the automotive team, there was a group of us led by one of our program managers. We organized a car show every year in our building, and we would have, upwards of 100 classic and, modern and classic cars that people would pay to show their car, out of $50, out of $75, whatever it was, which of course we would give to the giving campaign, and then people would buy a ticket to go to the show, which would go to the giving campaign. And so we were doing things like that to raise money for the giving campaign. But I think the real legacy of it is, I think there's a multiplier effect of people that are no longer at Microsoft, but are still doing those charitable things or those philanthropic things that are giving back. I think that legacy probably can't be measured. And I suspect it's a legacy that isn't replicated at any other company. The thing that I think Microsoft has always stayed true to, which I think is important and I think is still true, is, we or Microsoft as a company, we were always focused on providing access to technology to a very broad population of people, right? I mean, the early mission of Microsoft was a computer on every desk, and then a computer on every desk and in every home, and it kind of evolved to, the kernel. The kernel of that was technology should be democratized across a broad population because there are beneficial things that a broad population can do with that technology. They're really trying to make sure that democratization of technology can be broadly accessible and used to solve problems that are broadly beneficial, whether that's, some, healthcare issue in Africa or some business problem in, Taiwan or Europe or whatever. But there's so many things that can be done with technology if it's available and accessible and usable. And from the very early days, I think that was Microsoft's mission. And I think that is, to a certain extent, still what we should be remembered for, what people should see as the legacy of the company. There are deep connections that you make at a company, and I hope that the people that made those connections with me feel like I was a good friend to them. But in a professional sense, I hope that they think that I helped them do their best work, because that was for sure what I tried to do. I always wanted to help people do their best work. I always wanted to bring the context of how our products were being used to enable our engineering teams to do their best work and build their best product. Because a little bit back to that sort of democratization of technology, that, if we can make those products as best as we can to enable our customers to do their best work, then I think that if I helped in that in some way, I would be happy.